July 18th, 2020, Portland, Oregon. Black Lives Matter protests have been raging for over a month. In the hours after midnight, a lone figure walks forward into the narrow void between protesters and the riot police present that night. Wearing only a black stocking cap and a mask, a woman stood resolutely in front of a crowd of hundreds silhouetted by police spotlights in the black of night. Her bare back, buttocks, and legs visible to the crowd. A local news photographer snapped photos that quickly went viral. Twitter users dubbed the woman Naked Athena, after the goddess of war. Elle magazine of July 29, 2020 reports that her naked confrontation has been heralded as heroic, but it has also been criticized as a distraction from the Black Lives Matter movement. Novelist Mitchell S. Jackson wrote in a New York Times op-ed that no matter her intentions, for a moment at least, she might have upstaged the movement, but not in a way I could discern as connected to its stated objectives. Naked Athena caused quite a stir, enough to get folks talking about what she and others were doing and how police were treating protesters. And she did this simply by removing her clothes. That leads us to ask the question, how did Naked Athena use her body to make a rhetorical argument? To answer this question, we will use Kevin DeLuca's article, Unruly Arguments, The Body of Earth First, Act Up, and Queer Nation, found in the 1999 issue of Argumentation and Advocacy. In his article, DeLuca theorizes how successful protests can be made with the use of marginalized bodies, making it perfect for our analysis. So today, we will examine DeLuca's theory, apply it to Naked Athena, before finally examining some implications. DeLuca examined the advocacy group Queer Nation during the 90s protests to normalize homosexuals. The chant, "We're here, we're queer, get used to it," found its origin from Queer Nation. By examining Queer Nation's protests, DeLuca explains how one's body can be used as a tool of protest. There are three principles. The bodies are visible, intimate, and at risk. First, the body must be visible. Protesters of Queer Nation ensured that their bodies were visible in locales where LGBT individuals were not typically seen in large groups. Queer Nation did this by presenting their bodies in such places as straight bars, local neighborhoods, or outside churches. DeLuca notes that groups such as Queer Nation buy media coverage through using their bodies to create compelling images that attract attention. Second, the body must be presented in an intimate fashion. Groups such as Queer Nation present their bodies in a way that contradicts the heteronormative public displays of affection. This means that these people hugged and kissed and, yes, even held hands. This forced spectators of these performative protests to view their bodies outside the heteronormative standards of society. Third, the body must be at risk. To paraphrase DeLuca, the in-your-face rhetoric of Queer Nation is only effective when their bodies are at risk. This empowers the message of the protest because the protesters' very well-being is in danger. By acting queer in public, protesters risk physical violence. This aids the protests by revealing the personal passion these groups have for their social movements and the risks they are willing to take to achieve their goals. Now that we understand DeLuca's theory, let's apply it to Naked Athena. First, the body must be visible. During the protest, Naked Athena made sure she was seen by stepping into no man's land, the space between police and protesters. This physically and visually set her apart from everyone else. She paced the area near the sidewalk. She laid down, kicking up her feet. She did ballet poses, and of course, she was also nude. By clearly drawing attention to herself, Naked Athena demonstrates DeLuca's first principle. Second, the body must be presented in an intimate fashion. In an effort to dissuade Naked Athena, the police shot her in the foot with a rubber bullet, causing her enough pain to sit down on the asphalt and show the blood to her attackers. With legs splayed, Naked Athena's body placement created an intimate moment between her and the police. In an interview on the Portland-based podcast Unrefined Sophisticates, she expressed that, "I just wanted to see I just wanted them to see what they were shooting at. By presenting herself in an intimate fashion, Naked Athena was able to show the humanity of the protesters, demonstrating DeLuca's second principle. Third, the body must be at risk. There is no question. Naked Athena was in danger. The situation was extremely tense, and she stood in front of over a dozen heavily armed policemen wearing riot gear. Some attempted to shield her from the rubber bullets, but she insisted on being alone. By putting herself in real danger, Naked Athena demonstrated DeLuca's third principle. So let's return to our question. How did Naked Athena use her body to make a rhetorical argument? By applying DeLuca's theory to Naked Athena, we can now understand how her body is rhetorically effective due to the use of vulnerability. We can now examine two implications from this analysis. First, nudity is often used in a passive rhetorical fashion to expose ideas. But, despite her vulnerability, Naked Athena was rather aggressive. As she was shot in the foot with the rubber balls, she looked at the blood running down her leg and told the police, "I can still stand tall." After these words were said, Naked Athena positioned herself in an extremely bold and controversial manner. In the previously cited Elle magazine, she expressed that it was not supposed to be peaceful. She noted, "This fury arose in me. I wanted to be naked. I wanted to confront them." Due to the current hostile political environment and the massive interest generated by Naked Athena, the use of aggressive vulnerability may be copied as a tactic in the coming years of protest in America. Second, we have to question if this ended up distracting from the Black Lives Matter movement instead of helping. DeLuca notes that bodies need to be visible and intimate, but the nudity shown in this instance is all anyone wants to talk about. Immediately following the incident, more people were focused on finding this woman a catchy nickname than concentrating on Black Lives Matter. In an interview, Naked Athena identified herself as a sex worker in her 30s named Jen, and said being nudity in public was common for her. "There is a very deep feminine place in myself that felt provoked," she said. "I'm notoriously naked. I just have been that way for several years now, and there's not anywhere you can't find me naked. I'm a sex worker, and my nakedness is political. It's my expression." We know her intentions were in the right place, but given so much discussion surrounding one person's naked body, it's quite possible that instead of raising awareness, Naked Athena simply ended up being a distraction. Their concerns, Jen said, are absolutely valid, 100%. Today we examined DeLuca's theory, applied it to Naked Athena, before finally examining some implications. Who knows what the future will hold for the Black Lives Matter movement? But one thing is for certain. To achieve their goals of societal change, they will need all the bodies they can get. Although I'd imagine they'd prefer most of them to be clothed.